Hello, so today we're going to be going over how to put these ridges into your solid granny squares. And this is a very flexible technique. I wouldn't call it a pattern. You can create patterns out of it. Really just kind of depends. It's all using front post double crochet, so if you don't know how to do that, you'll be learning today. So this is kind of like a sampler square I did. I'm going to be making just a big blanket throw, just continuing this, so I won't be joining any squares or anything, but you could easily make any size squares you want and then combine them in any way you want to make any kind of blanket you want. So I'm going to give you a close-up. This is the hook I used for this particular square. It's a G hook. You can use whatever size hook you want. I'm going to be running the tutorial with my H hook. Whoop. There we go. And just to kind of show you it a little bit looser. This one was curling a little bit on me, which is kind of what the front post is going to do until you do like a round of single crochet or half double or double or whatever border you put on, and it should flatten out pretty nicely. I kind of like it curling in a little bit. Looks I don't know, when it gets nice and big, it'll look kind of just really cozy and comfy. So let's take a close-up look. And if you're familiar with front post double crochet, you get like an idea of how this is done. We're working a basic solid granny. So if you don't know how to do a solid granny, I have a tutorial on that. But it's basically, we'll be starting out our round with 3 double crochets, a chain 2 in the corner, 3 double crochets, chain 2 in the corner, and then we're just alternating doing a regular double crochet and then this front post double crochet. And the more front post double crochets you do over each other, just creates this nice ridge. So let's get into it, shall we? Alright, so let's get started. So we have the beginnings of a solid granny square here. You can see we have 4 sides. We have our 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2, until you have 4 sides and 4 corners if you want a square. If you want to have a hexagon, you would do it 6 times. So you would have 6 sides and 6 corners, and it's kind of like that for all the grannies. So it makes it really easy to get whatever shape you want. But today we're doing just a square. So I'm going to start this a little different. I want my joins to be perfectly hidden in my square. So as you can see, when you stretch it, it looks the same on every side, right? But what I did was, let me try and find the side that I did it on, is I hid my join right behind the main center ridge here, and makes it really nice and invisible. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and it's really, really easy. But you have to do it in the very first row here. So rather than, see, we're starting in our first, double crochet. This is where we slipped it together. What we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch again so that we are in the center, because that's where our center ridge line is going to be. So rather than doing it in this row that's going to be coming up, we're going to be doing our join right behind this ridge. and it's going to give us a really nice clean look. So you're just going to chain 2 and then do a front post double crochet. Now if you've never done a front post double crochet, I'm going to go really slow here so you can see and get it really up close. You're yarning over just like doing a double crochet, but rather than doing it into that stitch space, you're going to be doing it into the space below. So you're inserting your hook into this space right here on either side of that post, and then you're yarning over and bringing up that loop, right? And then I always kind of hold it sideways, that way I can get it nice and tight, but then you're just doing a regular double crochet. And that's it. That's exactly how it's done. So that stitch that you would have stitched into is behind, and it's pushing it up, right, to give you that ridge. And then you're just doing a regular double crochet on the next one. So for this first round, we're going to be doing a front post in just the center double crochets, and then it's just a regular double crochet all the way around, just like a solid granny. We'll be doing for our corners, so that we have nice square corners, we're only doing 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and 2 double crochets. And that's consistent throughout the whole square, no matter how large you get. Every corner is going to have 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and 2 double crochets. And that's your increase. That's what's allowing your square to get bigger, is that you're adding these 4 extra ones every single time. So your first stitch is always going to be a little hidden. You don't want your corner to start pulling this way, and then you end up with a square this way, and the square this way, and the square this way. You don't want it to start turning your corners. You want your corners to be straight. So you want to remember that you need to double crochet into that first one. That your stitch hole is always to the right of that first double crochet that you come to. And we're stitching in every stitch across for a solid granny. And a front post double crochet in our center one. And for the pattern we're working on today, we're going to be putting ridges every 2 double crochets. So we're going to have like a space of 2 double crochets and then a ridge, 2 double crochets and then a ridge all the way around. So, but for our first round, or I guess our second round here, we're just putting it in the center. So we have 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. And then we remember that we go to the right of our post into that first hole, and it looks like you're going into this again, so you're going like, oh well, I'm putting 2 and then I'm putting 3 on this side, but you're not. You're putting 2 into the space, and then you're putting 1 into this stitch right there. See that V, right? That way it's even on both sides. And your corner goes up square, or else you end up with like a pinwheel. So 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets, followed by a double crochet in the next stitch, so you don't want to forget about it. And then we'll be at our, so that's for that post. Now this post is the middle one, so we're doing a front post double crochet instead. And that just kind of gets you started on the ridge. That's 2, chain 2, 2 double crochets, and then remember we slip stitched out of this, right? So we have our chain 2 here. Now you can crochet into that, and then you have your other one, but it always kind of gives a very noticeable gap, so I am ignoring this chain 2. That way it gets hidden behind my post, and I am double crocheting into that first space where we slip stitched out, right? That way we could work in the center. I'm going to work into that space. You can kind of cheat it and go into the chain if you want. It's not going to show. And then I'm ignoring this chain 2, and I'm going into the top of my front post double crochet, and I'm slip stitching there. Right. And that will hide that chain 2 behind. And as you can see, you really have to stretch it to be able to see that other ridge that's going down. It just gets hidden right in there, and it just creates very symmetrical look on either side, so you don't have a little bit of a gap running up. So you chain 2, and then you're going to double crochet around the same stitch there in the center. Right, so you always are going to be starting with a front post double crochet. Now comes our pattern. So you can decide what you like better. You can go 2 regular double crochets and then do a front post. That's what I'm going to be doing today. You can decide if you want to do 3. Like say you don't want so many ridges, you just want it fewer ridges, more space in between. You can just decide however you like it, and that's what you do. But I'm going to be doing 2, so that's 2 regular ones. And then the very next post, I'm going to be doing a front post. Now you're going to want to, if you're new to crochet, don't get confused by where you're doing your front post. Remember that the space to the right, you know, when you stretch it out and you see that little capital P, remember that hole goes to the post that starts the P. So if you already have a stitch, like I did a double crochet into this hole of this P, then I know my front post is going into the one that does not have a stitch, right? Because you don't, if you put a front post double crochet into this one, you'll be increasing and you'll get a rounded spot on your square. So 2 in the corner, chain 2, 2 in the corner. Don't forget that first capital P that you're going into. Right, now you're going to want to, okay, I'm going to back up here a second so you don't get lost here when you turn the corner. So you're going to want both sides of this corner to be the same, right? So if you did a front post double crochet and then you did your corner, you're going to want to mirror that. I'm going to take this out so I can show you. You're going to want to mirror that on either side so that it's coming up at exactly the same side. So you can count if you want back from your posts, right? This is our center post that we did, the previous row. You can count back 2. So this one we know is regular. So this one is going to be getting a front post. Or you can count your corners and count how many you're going to be doing. So we know we did a front post and then we just went straight into the 2 on the corner. So we know we do 2 on this corner and then this one has to get it, right? So you can count either backward or you can count forward, right? Knowing that this is our midpoint and that you want either side of this corner to be exactly the same. That way you can be double checking your work. So front post for this one, and then it's 2 regular double crochets before our next front post double crochet. And the pattern stays consistent, so no matter how big you get, it's always going to be 2 double crochets and then a front post double crochet. And every time you do a corner, you're increasing the size of your square. So it's, and you want it to be the same, so it's always going to be 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. Sorry, I got a little off camera there. So, you know, our first one gets a ridge, and then we do 2. Two regular double crochets, and then a front post double crochet, followed by a corner. It's very repetitive, very easy once you get a few rounds under your belt. Do a couple practice squares to decide what your hook size should be, whether you need to go with a smaller hook size to make it tighter to get the look you want, or to go up a hook size to get your pattern to be a little looser and easier to manage. I think if you're just first buying hooks, or you don't have too many hooks, I would suggest you get, you know, a G, an H, and an I hook. Those kind of seem to be the ones that I always gravitate toward. I've been crocheting for about 30 years now, since I was about 10. So now you know how old I am. But so like my technique is a little bit looser. I don't grip everything really tight. I have kind of a looser grip now, so I don't have to worry about, you know, strangling my yarn. And then we slip stitch, and we're just ignoring that chain 2, because we don't want to crochet into this and then we're increasing this side by 1. And you think that's not going to make a huge deal, but it will over time. If you don't skip that chain 2, it'll just slowly start fanning out like this, and you'll have one side that is tremendously bigger. So remember, when you get around to the end, right, you go into that last one, skip the chain and just go straight into that front post double crochet, and then do your slip stitch into that. And that's going to be continued, and you can kind of see the difference already. This is an H hook. I did this one with a G hook, and I just kind of wanted to see what the difference was going to be, but how much looser this is. These ridges are a little bit more pronounced because it's a smaller hook and it's tighter, more compact together, where this is going to give me a little bit looser of a feel. So I'll do a few more rounds with this one, and then and we'll see which one I like better. It's always a good idea to do like a test square. So we did our chain 2 that we're ignoring, right? And our front post double crochet, and then we're just going to keep continuing around, and it's just, you know, it's the easiest thing. No matter how many rows up you are, it's always the same. Chain 2, front post double crochet, followed by 2 regular, and then a front post, all right, and then 2 regular double crochets. So that's 1, that's 2, and now we don't have, we're at our corner. I'm going to get this out of the way, that way you have more of a contrast with the background here. So we did our 2, and we don't have a post to do a front post on. Don't worry about it. You're at the corner, so every corner is worked exactly the same. So it doesn't matter where you are in your front post, 2 double crochets, front post, 2 double crochets. Doesn't matter. If you get to a corner, make the corner. It will all work out. So our corners are always what? 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. So you just do that. Right? And then you want every corner, you want it to match up with the other side, right? So you know that you're going to be doing a whole string of just regular double crochets here before you get to the next ridge. Don't worry, the pattern does work out, because when you go the next round you'll be doing 2 regulars, and then this one will be our ridge, and it will pop this one up, and then it will continue our pattern, right? So on the corner, don't forget that first double crochet. We don't want crookedy corners. And we're at our front post. Whoop, keeps sliding down. I'm so sorry about that. So we're at our next front post double crochet, right? So you'll have to kind of keep an eye out for them, especially if you're using like a single colored yarn like this one is. You'll want to kind of keep an eye out for these ridges, because that's where you're going to be putting your ridge on top of every ridge. So for this corner, we ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochets before we got to our chain 2. So on this side of the corner we should have exactly the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then our front post double crochet, so that every corner is exactly the same number of double crochets. And then so the corners are the only kind of somewhat tricky spot. Other than that, these straightaways are really easy. It's just 2 double crochets and then the front post. 2 double crochets, and then front post. And there's no more trick to it than that. So we're at our next corner. So we know we have no place to do a front post. We're at a corner, so we have to just make the corner. Which is always 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. And I'm just going to double crochet until I get to the next ridge, which I know is going to be 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then loop around that front post. And the more rows you get under your belt, the more the ridges will be pronounced, because you're just kind of emphasizing them. Every time you go around, you're just popping them forward until it just really gives you a really nice ridge here. Alright, so I'm going to finish up this corner and we'll meet you back for the next round. Okay, so you've been working on your never-ending ridged granny square and you've run out of yarn. Uh-oh. what do you do? So there's a couple different things you can do. We ended here on a front post double crochet. You can pull it all the way through like that and start weaving it in, or you can join it. So I'm going to show you first how to do it this way, and then I'm going to show you kind of like the fast, kind of cheaty way that is really fast when you're working with a single color. So I just put my hook back into that stitch, ignoring the fact that I pulled the tail all the way through, and I just am I'm not really making a loop, I'm just kind of doubling it up, making sure I have enough of a tail that I can weave in at the end. Don't leave it too short, and I'm just kind of holding both of them like that, and I'm just going to draw up a loop and then continue. So I'll just drop that second one and kind of hold it in place with my thumb, and then I'll just make my next double crochet. So you have your tail from the yarn you ran out of, and you have your new tail, and you just kind of put both of them to the back of your work, and when you're finished with your round or your blanket or with a few stitches, you can go back and get an embroidery needle and weave that in, going up and down the posts and through and twisted, and get them really good and looped in there. But that's probably the smoothest way of adding new yarn. You can see there's like really no difference, and when you get this one, if I can show you here, when you get this one pulled in, it is really like there's no change whatsoever. It's like you really can't tell where the new yarn came through. The other way of doing it, doop doop doop, and I'm just gonna pick this out. Is to make what they call, oh man, see, this is why this is a good way of doing it, because you see it's really once you pull that loop through, it just really goes. Other way to do it is with a magic knot. This can be pretty tricky for some people. You have your yarn that you ran out of and your new yarn here, and you just kind of put them together like that. Hold them in your finger. You take that new yarn and you just kind of go around your thumb twice, making sure you're not crossing it, you're just going it across like that all the way through, and then you're going in between. Pull this one up a little bit. So you're going around your thumb twice, and then you're going in between your thumb and the yarn, right, for that third loop. And then you take these bits here and you're going to fold them into that circle. And I'm going to take my thumb out, that way you can kind of see it a little better. But you're just kind of folding it in there like that. And it helps if you kind of keep your thumb there. And then you pull this and you can see it getting tighter. You just keep pulling until you get a nice strong knot. And that's what happens sometimes, and then you have to do it again. let me go get my scissors and clip this tip off and we'll try it again. Okay, and I swear I'm going to just leave this all in. I could edit that part out, but I'm not going to, because I want you to see that. Now, I haven't been doing the magic knot for very long. I prefer to do it the way I just showed you, but I'm going to show you this way again. So twice around your thumb, through the middle, and then you're tucking these two tails underneath, and then you're pulling it in. And it's a little bit of a pain, but it does make a pretty good knot. And I just kind of keep inching it down until it's there. And then once you do it, I mean, it creates a really nice, strong knot. And once you have it, then these little dilly bobbers here, I mean, you can cut that very flush. And I have not had anything come loose on the projects that I've used doing this knot. I don't like to use this knot when I'm changing colors, but for a really thick blanket like this, it's really not going to make a big difference. And this is like a home blanket. It's not a blanket I'm giving to anybody, so if I feel a knot in my own stuff, it really doesn't bother me too much, but I'm not a huge fan. And with this, so the knot's going to be tucked in there into that stitch. And then you can just kind of continue. So we've gotten a few rows up, and we're just going to keep working it. And I'm just going to, you know, sometimes people go, oh, they only showed like the first 3 rows, and they get a little confused and lost. But it's the pattern is exactly the same as the first 2 rows. It just continues and just repeats the same way over and over again. So you have a front post double crochet, then 2 double crochets, and then a front post. So we did 2, and then we're adding our next. And with this pattern of going every 2, what I'm finding is it kind of repeats, you know. It's like sometimes I'm going in the corner, sometimes I'm going in the second one, sometimes I'm just doing like 4 at a time, and it just you know, just kind of repeats. You know, you kind of get into a rhythm, but it's just do the same thing until you get to a corner, and every corner is worked exactly the same no matter how big your blanket gets. It's 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, right? And then you want to make sure that each side of your corner is the same for the ridge. So we did a ridge, and then we went into our corner, so now we do another ridge, which is exactly like, I think, like the 3rd row that we did or something. I can't remember. But, and there we go. So if you're noticing that I switched hooks, you're not going crazy. I did switch hooks, switch back to the square that I was doing with the G hook, because I kind of like how this is coming out a little thicker. But so every side is worked exactly the same. So you want every side to have the same number of ridges, the same number of double crochets, and you're just following the same pattern of 2 double crochets and then continuing the ridge, and 2 double crochets. You just repeat. Okay. And every single stitch is going to get worked into, whether it's a ridge or a double crochet. And you just keep going until you're ready to stop. And yeah, make yourself a nice big comfy blanket, or you can do like 2 of these squares and then sew them together and leave the top open and make a strap, make a purse. You could cover a box with it and do 6 sides. And really, that's, when you're working with squares, you just keep going. Or you can do a few different ridge squares, do some with 3, do some with 2, do some with no ridges at all, and then just put them all together for a multi-textured blanket. And just join them together. And that's it. I mean, there's not much I think I can show you. Let me know if you're being tripped up by something that needs more explaining. Explanating. I'm going to invent my own vocabulary here. It needs more explanation. Let me know, and I'll be happy to do a supplemental video, or you know, in addition to the blog post. That way you can understand it better. So yeah, if you need extra help, just message me, let me know, and I'll be happy to help you. But here we go. The very pretty little ridged granny square.